Hello again, YouTube. It's been more than a week since we last spoke, but finally I'm back to say some more shit. And I have to be honest, there's really not a lot of interesting stuff going on over the past week. There's been a fair amount of news, but nothing really that I found to be particularly of interest. Or if it was interesting, I didn't think it was worth talking about. We're getting closer to the announcement or reveal of the next Xbox, so that's something to look forward to. But as far as recent news that the Wii U won't get Madden, or Rockstar has a big Grand Theft Auto 5 announcement coming next week, or Gran Turismo 6 is expected to be announced next week, it's all noteworthy, but not really worth a discussion. Now, I could make another video trolling the Wii U fanboys, but really, I've been having enough fun doing that in the comments section of everybody else's video, so I'll let them slide for today. What I do want to discuss today, however, is the notion that there's a massive video game crash coming. And now one of the more outspoken YouTubers who has consistently made the case for a video game crash is Razorfist. And I would assume that at least a few of you have heard of him or seen his show. Doc, I don't know what his show's called. The Razor Vlog or some shit, I don't know. But anyway. For the most part, I don't take Razorfist too seriously, as I see him as more of an entertainer than anyone whose opinion I would consider particularly well informed. I would also consider him satire, but let's be real here. His videos are a lot more entertaining than mine, with me talking in a dumbass accent over a shitty quality gameplay video. But I do believe that I have the better opinion, and I generally disagree with Razorfist 80% of the time. Now, to be able to discuss a crash, I think we need to look at what the word actually means in this context. The video game crash of 1983 saw the industry lose, I think, around almost 97%, maybe it was 97%, of its revenue by 1985. So from the beginning of 83 till the end of 85 saw a 97% drop in revenue. And the stock market crash that led to the Great Depression, the Dow Jones saw somewhere around 25% of its average drop over a period of, I believe, 2 or 3 days. So by the very nature of the word, a crash is an event that happens pretty quickly and relatively unexpectedly. Like a car crash, boom, there it is, and you have little time to react or even realize what's going on until the damage is already done. So as we discuss this, let's try to keep in mind that there is certainly a difference between an industry crashing and an industry seeing receding revenue over a 2 or 3 year period. And I believe the best way to convey the state of the industry right now is to refer to a few articles and sales figures I found online. And starting with one which states the industry revenue trends dating back more than 30 years. And now, while these numbers in this article, they may not be perfect, but they are reasonably close as a normal person can get with Google rather than direct access to sales information. And as for this first site, I was a bit skeptical of the numbers it provided, but I verified a few of them with secondary sources, and they seem to match up pretty well. So let's go ahead and take a look. And if we go all the way back to 1982, we can see that the combined total for the U.S. video game industry was $12.8 billion. Now that's arcade and console. $12.8 billion, and to put that in perspective, that's $30.39 billion in 2011 or 12 dollars. And so in 1983, that fell to a total of $8.2 billion in the United States, and adjusted for inflation, that's $18.86 billion. And I believe that is around a 30 35 or 36% drop in revenue. And then in 1984, it drops to 800 million. And then by 1985, it drops to 100 million. And then as we go on a few years, we see a steady growth. In 86, it's around 4.43 billion total industry revenue in the United States. And then we go on, it keeps climbing all the way up until it looks like $1995, we have a $5 billion U.S. home console market. 1996, we have an $8 billion U.S. home console market. And then 1997, these switched to worldwide numbers. 18 billion, 98, around 30 billion. 99, we see a drop to about 20 billion. And then in 2000, 14.7 billion. And then from there we see fairly explosive growth all the way up until 2006, 31.6 billion. And then we really see the industry take off from 2006 all the way up until the present. And in fact, between 2006 and 2009, the industry practically doubles from 31.6 billion in 2006 to 60.4 billion in 2009 and 65 billion in 2011. And these are global numbers. Now, let's go ahead, and I couldn't find anything that stated the numbers for 2012, but I did find a forecast from Reuters, and this was in the middle of 2012, and it says that the revenue forecast for 2012 was 70 billion, up from 65 billion in 2011. And if you factor in mobile games on smartphones and tablets, that number is expected to be 78.5 billion in 2012. So let's go ahead and jump over to an article from Polygon. And now Polygon is talking about a 27% drop in hardware sales year over year. And they say the NPD Group, a firm which tracks the sales of physical goods in the video game industry, reports hardware sales fell 27% year over year in 2012. The annual 2012 dollar sales for video game hardware was 4.04 billion, which represents a 27% decline from the 5.57 billion brought in by hardware sales in 2011. In December alone, year-over-year hardware sales fell 20% from 1.33 billion in December 2011 to 1.05 billion during the same period of 2012. The report also says that physical retail sales for software declined 23% during 2012, falling from 8.69 billion to 6.71 billion year over year. The NPD Group doesn't track digital software sales, however, making this a less than ideal method of tracking the industry's relative health. While the NPD Group did not release the annual sales figures for the consoles, data on the sales performance of hardware in December 2012 was made available. In December 2012, in North America, the Xbox 360 sold 1.4 million units, down 17.6% from the same time in the previous year when the console sold 1.7 million units. And now let's not forget, we are in an 8-year console generation with this Xbox 360. So I think a slight decline would be expected. Sales of the Nintendo Wii, back to Polygon here, also fell, with the Wii selling 475,000 units this past December, a 55.2% drop from 2011's 1.06 million units. Official figures for PlayStation 3 sales have not been released, but Microsoft said with the release of its Xbox 360 figures that the console sold more than double the amount of the second place console in the United States in the month of December, which would suggest that the PS3 sold fewer than 700,000 units, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to continue reading this article because I think we have already gotten all the relative information from it. All the relevant information, rather. And now let's switch to this article from USA Today that paints a better picture of software sales. And it says, consumer spending on video game content in 2012 dropped 9% to 14.8 billion, according to the NPD Group. And now remember, of the $65 to $70 billion industry, 14.8 billion is U.S. software sales. And it says consumers spent $14.8 billion on video game content in 2012, a decline of 9% according to the NPD Group. Breaking down the 2012 spending, NPD says consumers spent $7.09 billion on physical video game and PC software, a 21% drop from 2011, and $5.92 billion on digital games, which includes mobile and social games. And now, if you don't want to include mobile and social games, I found a chart that suggests in January of 2012 the mobile games market accounted for $691 million. In January 2013, that had grown to $960 million. So if we take that number and adjust this article, we would say 5 billion even on digital games. And that would give us a more accurate picture without factoring in the mobile games, which would be a 16% increase with counting mobile games. And an additional 1.79 billion came from spending on used games and rented games, NPD says. Total spending in 2011 amounted to 16.34 billion. The increase in digital game spending in 2012 wasn't enough to offset decreased physical game spending. So the difference total was 9%, and I believe if you subtract that close to $1 billion that mobile game sales accounted for, that number would adjust to around 15% rather than 9%. So we saw maybe a 15% drop in the traditional console market as far as software revenue is concerned. Now, all things considered, we should expect sales to slip a bit. Yes, the numbers are down, but they're down from record highs in an industry that managed to double itself in 3 years, from 2006 to 2009, and an industry that has seen steady growth since then. We're in an 8-year console generation without the fantastic sales of a machine like the Wii that drove a lot of the industry growth. The sales of Call of Duty are slipping, a game which drove a lot of industry growth as well. It only makes sense that the numbers are down, considering the fact that an industry cannot grow year over year forever. No industry can sustain such explosive growth, and we've reached a point where things will begin to drop and stabilize. If you want to understand why layoffs are happening and studios are closing, we have to consider that during the boom period, a lot of companies became bloated. Cash flow was great, so they took the opportunity to expand their staff and their operations. And it is always easier for a business to expand operations than it is to scale back at the appropriate time. Growth and expansion is a sign of strength, while downsizing is a sign of weakness that also influences investor confidence. So it is no surprise that they wait so late to adjust their businesses to a changing market. And this doesn't even account for just plain bad business decisions like 38 Studios taking out a ridiculous loan because they assumed that video games were a can't-lose business, or a company like THQ losing it all because they thought the U-Draw tablet was the next Call of Duty, and then ended up selling those tablets for $10 a piece. They made so many of the damn things that you can still get the Xbox 360 version for $13 on Amazon. So this is the industry's. Is the industry's booming growth period over? Yes, probably. Probably it is. The boom is now shifted to the mobile game market, and then that's probably where it's going to stay, because the boom always shifts to the emerging technology, and the emerging technology is the mobile games market, and the PCs will see probably a more healthy growth than consoles, at least in the short term, because again, that Steam and digital distribution is an emerging technology, and we've yet to see that technology fully realize that emergence on a console. But anyway, so will it stabilize in the coming years and become a slightly smaller industry than it once was at the height of its popularity in 2008? And the answer to that is probably. But is there a crash that's going to wipe out most of the large gaming companies and cut console sales and revenue in half and ultimately crash the North American video game market again? No, there's no crash. No crash in at least the foreseeable future. God damn it, there's no crash.